Good afternoon, Toronto. How was lunch? Lunch was good for some of you. For others, I guess we're not quite there yet. So welcome back from the lunch break. As you're getting settled back in your seats again, I really have some exciting artwork to draw your attention to. So on the right-hand side of the hall, you will see here Caroline of Brilliance Mastery. And she is a phenomenal visual facilitator, trainer, and teacher. And actually, for everyone who's here today, stop by her booth, not just to see the pictures, but also she has a special offer on May 16th. She is going to be teaching this craft of learning and visual facilitation. And for anyone that's here today, there's an opportunity for you to get a bit of a deal on that. And so if you want to learn how to do visual facilitation, take a look at the pictures of each of our speakers as well. And also, if we have your email address in the conference summary package you'll get from us at the end of next week, you will likely have every one of those pictures in the package as well, professional pictures of it. So look forward to that. So let me check in with you. How are you doing on meeting at least two people? Raise your hand if you've met someone. Someone, anyone. Wow, okay, wow, relationships are forming. This is good. How are we doing on a key insight from each speaker? Does everybody have at least one key insight from each of the speakers you've heard today? Phenomenal. And as we take a look, did everyone also receive a very special little gift on your seat as you came back? And that is from Saje, Peppermint Halo. At the end of the executive panel, they're going to take you through an exercise of what you too can do with Peppermint Halo. So I look forward to seeing and experiencing that with you. And now, as we talked about, it's kind of interesting that a man is hosting the Art of Leadership for Women. And oftentimes I actually moderate the executive panel. But today, we thought it would be great to do something a little more special, something a little different. And so to actually moderate the panel today, Anique Asher joins us today from Scotiabank. In her role as SVP, she leads the Enterprise Financial Planning, Analysis, and Optimization team. Her role includes oversight of the global financial plan, corporate function expenses, finance optimization, as well as the prioritization and capital allocation decisions of Scotiabank's strategic project spend. Anique drives a customer-focused culture throughout her team to deepen client relationships and leverage broader bank relationships, systems, and knowledge. Anique holds her Honours Business Administration and a Master's Business Administration Finance from the University of Western Ontario, and she holds a Chartered Accountant designation. As a champion of gender equality and diversity at Scotiabank, we are so excited to have her here today as a true representation of women in leadership. Please join me in welcoming Anique Asher.
Thank you very much, Will. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And it's so nice to actually be introduced. I hear that long narrative about my experience, but all I took away is what Bill said first, which is someone special today. So I'm happy about that. I'm so honored to be here today as moderator of this panel, and to be in the company of such amazing women. Not only the women that you're about to meet, but also the fantastic women that are in the audience today, and I had the opportunity to have lunch with a couple of those. And for me, there's such a great energy when you bring a group of women like this together, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the perspectives of each of the panelists today. And the benefit, personally, is not only the opportunity to be here at a leadership event on behalf of Scotiabank, but also for me to hear firsthand some of the real life experiences of the women that you're going to hear from today. And even in the short space of time that we've spent getting ready and getting to know each other, I think you're going to be very excited and very engaged by the conversation that we're going to have. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Amanda, Heather, Margo, Leigh, and Kate to the stage. So, good afternoon, ladies, and thank you for joining. I thought before we get into our conversation, that we could start off with just a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you're hoping to get out of today's panel. So, Kate, why don't we start with you?
Well, I am so excited to be back in my home province of Ontario. Yay! I grew up in small town Ontario in my mother's fabric store, where my passion for community and bringing people together and actually helping them feel better started. And it was so exciting for us to move into the Toronto and Ontario market, and I just couldn't be more thrilled to be here with you today with these incredible women and talk about leadership.
You want to go ahead?
Okay, sure.
Go in
Hi,
order?
I'm Leigh Chalmers, and I'm the Chief Auditor at Sun Life. And prior to that, I think probably what got me more involved in diversity and inclusion was when I took on the role at PwC as the Chief Inclusion Officer. And I think that really is what got me passionate about the topic. I certainly started coming to these events, and I know this morning was insightful. Many people already have a lot of things to take away, and I think I still remember my first conference, and the topic was on how women are afraid to take risks. And they were describing me, and I spent 22 years at PwC, and after that conference, and not shortly after that, I left my organization and took a risk, and that's when I joined Sun Life. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of this conference as well.
Okay, well, Leigh clearly has her family in the audience, but Margo?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Margo Hoyt. I'm a managing director with an organization called LHH Knightsbridge. What I love about our organization and what I'm really hoping to get out of today is that we're all about leadership. So if you know LHH Knightsbridge, you might know us from the recruitment side of our business, and we certainly help to promote and find great women for roles. I lead our talent and leadership development business, and we've learned a lot. We've done research, and we work a lot with women and through diversity and inclusion programs on really helping to elevate their leadership and help them to advance their careers. And of course, others know our organization through career and executive career transition services, which again, really helping women to find their vision, their passion, and position themselves well for their career. So this is something that is very near and dear, not only personally, I'm passionate about it, but also organizationally. This is our business, so happy to share that. Thanks, fans.
Wow, there's a bit of a competition going on now. Like, I'm homegrown Toronto. Can I get a little bit of a, I'm at home. Heather Haslam, I get to do marketing for ADP in Canada. And ADP is a global leader in HR services and technology. And what that really means is we get to do support and provide Canadian businesses with the opportunity to elevate using their people as a competitive differentiator, providing them the tools. What I'm hoping to get out of today, I've had the opportunity, like Leigh, like the other panelists, to attend a number of these, and I always love taking a bit of a breath and listening and getting inspired by having other people elevate each other. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping to get out.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Amanda?
Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm Amanda Hodges, and I lead marketing for North America at Dell Technologies. You know, at Dell Technologies, diversity and inclusion is truly a piece of the fabric of our business, and we don't do it to be nice. We actually do it because it's a proven competitive advantage. And you know, I really want to use this time to share some of the things we're doing, and also, even more importantly, learn from all of you and through the Q&A what other great ideas are out there that we can even take back and leverage and put into practice. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot to learn, so it's great to have this opportunity to come together.
Okay, that's great. And Amanda, clearly you won the family competition, so.
Go Canada.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to start, though. So why don't we start off with you and get your thoughts on what are some of the strategies that you think that can help women achieve more prominent roles in the organizations that they're in now? And I'm going to open that up to everyone. So why don't you talk about that, Amanda, and then we can sort of get to everyone's thoughts.
Sure. There's a lot you can do, including showing up. So it's great to see everyone here. I think my big three would be being passionate, having a vision, and because I'm in marketing, knowing your brand. What I'd say about being passionate, and I said this earlier at lunch, is business is the most competitive sport. and people work hard and are very determined and are doing the right things, and there's a lot of people that are out there doing that, and to really gain that competitive edge, it's night and day whether you're passionate or not about what you're driving. And I have an example where I was in Detroit, Michigan, working for GE Plastics in the automotive division, and I don't like cars. So like I drive a minivan, which my husband doesn't really consider a car. And I was working around the clock, killing myself, whatever. I went out to lunch with a bunch of customers. They spent the whole time talking about cars, and I had nothing to talk about. Like I just wasn't gonna make it. I wasn't gonna make it to the next level. And so, it really prompted me to think about, what do I care about? What am I passionate about? What should I do? Where should I go? Which kind of led me back to business school and led me into technology in front of all of you today. So I'd say really being thoughtful about what are you passionate about? What are you going to jump out of bed? It's going to give you the edge. Really quickly on just vision, like where are you going, right? And it can be broad if you look at the leaders across your organization or look at different industries, but having a vision of where you're going and starting to have those conversations now about, I'd like to be in that job. These are the type of things that I'm interested in. Having that conversation before those roles open up, instead of waiting to when the role opened up and it's like, well, I didn't know you were interested, or you should have been doing these 3 things, right? Knowing 3 to 4 roles ahead of where you want to go and starting to work on that ahead of time is good. And then last thing, like I said, from a marketing perspective, know your brand. Right? Be purposeful about your brand. You have a brand whether you're working on it or not, right? People have an opinion of you and what you're good at and what your strengths are. So pick the couple things that you want to focus on. For me, it's technology, it's women in technology, it's marketing transformation, and I do a lot with children and in the community with underprivileged children in different communities. And so I focus my time on those 3 things. It helps me prioritize myself. It's one of the reasons that I'm here today, because it's something that I'm passionate about. So those are the big ones: passion, vision, and brand.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like you were eavesdropping on our conversation at lunch, because Heather and I were talking about the same thing. So
She stole a little bit of my thunder. But I guess that's part of the point. What I think my number one strategy to start off with is having a trigger that helps me get out of my head. And what I mean by that is, sometimes there's that inner dialogue that's distracting or even counterproductive at times. Knowing when that's happening and how to get beyond it is an important strategy for me. I always think, for me, it's something that I wrote down in a notebook once. I was early on in my career and working on a fairly strategic project, and I got to attend this meeting with seemingly intimidating people. So the president of the business unit, we're in her office. It's a big boardroom, and there's all of these stakeholders around the table, and it gets to the point where everybody's weighing in and adding in different lenses and perspectives. And all of a sudden, the head of sales says something really smart. And I think to myself, what's wrong with me that I didn't consider that? They're probably all thinking that. They're probably all thinking, oh my goodness, what's wrong with her? She shouldn't be leading this project. You know what they're probably thinking? Well, she is by far the most junior person in this. Well, why is she not taking notes? Why is she not taking notes? Oh my gosh, they're probably all horrified. So I get my book and I get out my pen and I write down, I'm taking notes. And that to me is the trigger to, in terms of a strategy on how to move forward, that's one. Another one, and unfortunately it took me really until recently to learn, I recognized that really successful people don't ask for permission. They listen to Nike. They assume that empowerment. They take risks, they have courage. When they know it's the right thing, they tell you. Whether or not that's because they're going to take their kid to a Christmas concert or invest somewhere in the business, they just do it. And so that to me is a second big one. Oh, good, I love the clap. I love the participation. And then very similar to what Amanda said about the brand is knowing what your strengths are, that to me is a strategy. It's understanding, what you're really good at, what makes you special. What is the thing that comes a little more easily to you, so that you know how to build that up and focus on it.
great. It's good insight. Margo?
I have a technical term for the voice in your head. It's called the itty bitty shitty club. Yeah, we all have had that. I'm going to start with something that's a little different in terms of there's a lot of talented women here. And I would suggest that one of the first things we can do to advance our career is look for organizations that are receptive to advancing talented women, right? There are a lot of leading organizations out there who are doing terrific things to make an organization and a culture that is really receptive and encouraging and advancing all sorts of diversity in their organizations. And we owe ourselves to find those organizations and be part of them. We can be selective, we can be choosy, and I think that's an important power that we have and we don't always use, is to really find that receptive audience. I would say secondly, and just building on, have your vision and share that vision is really important. And the research that is out there, recent research around women do tend to expect that just doing good work is enough, and that somehow magically people will see that and they'll tap you on the shoulder and you will be elevated to higher and more senior roles. And I don't want to burst anybody's bubble or be a downer on the day, but it just doesn't happen that way that often, right? There are always going to be exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, we really do need to be comfortable sharing the vision, speaking up, being confident about what we can do, knowing our brand, all of those other things, but you just can't wait to be tapped on the shoulder and automatically elevated. And the third point that I'll speak to is really, again, based on some of the research that we know that's different about gender, is that women are really good at networking, but more so at peer level and below. And that's terrific. We need to be able to do that, right? But for career advancement, women really need to be comfortable also networking up with people who have influence on their career. And so that can be something that men are really more comfortable at. And again, these are broad paintbrushes, don't anybody tweet. But we know that from the gender research that women need to be generally really strengthening that muscle about networking up and looking for the people who can have influence on their own careers.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I feel like when you say you paint that broad brush, you're really talking about me, because that's something that I've always struggled with in my career as well. And I find when you find the women in the organizations that help you identify that, it makes a big difference. Leigh, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess I just want to start. I love sitting on these panels because I learned so much. So everything I've heard is certainly not things I would have come up with, but really will take away from this conference. So what I thought of was, if I look back on myself 20 years ago, what are the things I know now that I wish I'd known? So one is about, building relationships. Authentic relationships is, for me, what's critical. I had one point in my career and I thought I was going to be really strategic, and I saw a senior partner and I knew, there was a potential he was going to be CEO, and I sort of thought, I don't know him. I want him to be my mentor, and it was a bit of a matching program. Well, that didn't go very far. We met, but at the end of the day, I just felt like I'd leave from those feeling more depressed and less motivated. But it was those relationships that I'd built, when you're in the weeds, working long hours with people, and you'd proven yourself, or you had a connection with someone. And in hindsight, those are the relationships that really made a difference in my career. The second one I'd say is take risks. Obviously, you heard it took me 22 years to take a risk. I sort of look back and think, if I'd taken more risks, what would that have looked like? So that's the second one. And then the last one is about being willing to, it's sort of tied to both of those, but it's getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your regular practice area, taking on new challenges or new opportunities, and being visible, I guess, as you do that. Because, I think it goes to the point of putting your head down and thinking because you do good work, you'll get recognized. When I got put forward for partner, obviously everybody I worked with was supportive, but then it came out, there's a few people who kind of said, I don't know Leigh. She just sits in her room in her office, gets her work done. And in hindsight, that almost hurt me. And, I saw that as more people were getting put forward to that next promotion. It's about being visible and having people know who you are and know what you're capable of.
So much wisdom up here. One of the things that we talk a lot about at Sage, and one of our values, one of our core values, is that of growth. And I know you're all here because you're interested in growth. But when I think about growth, I think about it in terms of how I'm growing as a person, as opposed to necessarily, how the business is growing. We know that we need talent, we need technical skills, we need IQ, but I think that the biggest thing that propels us forward, whether we're men or women, is our self-awareness and our emotional quotient. And the great thing about this is you can practice this in line at Starbucks, you can practice this when you go home to your family, to your friends, and you can certainly practice this in your careers. But how I break that down, how we can raise our emotional quotient is first of all through our self-awareness. We've talked about this here. What am I good at? How do I learn things? What are environments where I can set myself up to win? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What can take me out? So really learning and building on your self-awareness, and there's so many tools to do that. The second thing I think about raising our emotional quotient is around our ability to take responsibility. And we see over and over again in leadership, you will know this from people on your teams, when the place is on fire and things are not going well, and the people that start pointing fingers and shirking responsibility, they are not the people you want to promote. They are not the people on your team. It doesn't matter if you were in the building when the place was on fire. If you're able to step up and say, I'm going to be responsible for this, I'm going to help make change, I'm going to take this on my shoulders, what happens? We get more responsibility. And I think it's one of the ways, again, as women, that we can really stand up and improve our emotional quotient and be able to be in position to get greater roles. And the third thing that I think about around raising how we are emotionally is what we tell ourselves. So I think that we can, what are the things that take ourselves out? And one of the things that I talk about a lot is don't compare the inside of your life, all of the things you know about yourself, you've got the inside track, to the outside that you see with other people. And in today's world of, so much, we're all living so much more public lives than we certainly were when I started my career. Everything you ever want to know about someone, is available online. And guess what? It's the glossy picture that we see out there. And then we take that and all of those successes, and we assume that other people don't have any insecurities, any faults, and we look at the inside of who we are, and we think, oh, I don't think I can put my hand up for that. And so don't take yourself out by comparing that outside view you have of other people to your inside.
Thanks, Kate. When I go to events like this, I always take sort of a little book with me and I write down the key themes that I'm taking away from this. And as this is going on, I'm making these mental notes and I'm running out of space because I think there's so much good insight here. And just the themes around networking and take risks and know your brand, some that just resonated with me. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to start with you, Leigh. And this is a big topic, so I think that it can be hard to get it into a couple of sentences as to how you approach this. But I want to talk about diversity and inclusion, and I want to get your thoughts on what Sun Life is doing to raise the spotlight on diversity and inclusion, and specifically women in leadership.
Great, thank you. I've only been at the organization 2 years, and I already have a great contingent here with me. So I'm really excited to share with you. Certainly, I'll sort of focus on 3 commitments. And first of all, I'd have to say, if coming from internal audit, if I see it as a very good place to work, that's a high bar, because it is a hard role to really get a lens on that organization. So I'd say there's 3 things that we're doing that I'm quite proud of. And so it's about commitments, it's about buy-in from the leaders, and it's about focusing on accelerated talent development and succession planning. So on the commitments, this is something that the CEO came out with in his leadership team 2 years ago about the need to have gender equity within all of our businesses. So our leaders are focused on looking at their current leadership, focusing on how do we get to gender equity, how do we better represent our people and our clients. So that's a huge focus, and it's a strong commitment from the top. I was saying at lunch, we have a board of directors with 4 of 11 women, and those women are very vocal and strong. So the voice up top it's a strong commitment from the top. The next one is about the buy-in from the leadership. So I feel like the conversation has shifted from this is a tick the box exercise. This is a nice to have. I think we heard it already. It's about this is important, and if we're going to compete, this is something we have to do as opposed it's something that's nice to do. And then the last thing I think that I'm really impressed with when I came into the organization is that they take succession planning seriously. So it's looking at all our senior roles, and particularly on my team, I can speak to exactly what I'm doing, but we're taking all of the key roles and looking at what does the pipeline look like, and then stepping back and saying, does it represent diversity? Do we have the right gender balance? And if not, why? And it's not something that's immediate. It's sort of, are they ready this year? Are they ready 2 to 5 years or after 5? And so you should really be able to fill up that slate and figure out if they're not ready now, what do they need to get there? So what are the assignments you're going to give them? What are the opportunities you're going to give them? And I think, maybe it's, me coming from professional services to the corporate world, but I was really impressed with that, and they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
So
That's great, and I think that really resonates with all of us, just the importance of putting the spotlight on it and being methodical on looking at it every year. And I want to just touch on a little bit of the point that Heather made, and I'm going to ask Amanda you this question, and that's on mentorship and the importance of mentorship. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on mentorship and sponsorship, and think of those two together. And do you think both are really needed, and how do you see those two working together?
So I'm going to ask the audience a question maybe first. So do you raise your hand if you think that sponsorship and mentorship are different, and do you have both? Different and both. So I think this side of the room might have a little bit more. I would argue that they are different, and I use them very differently. So I'll share with you a couple of examples, and then you guys can decide if you want to put it back into practice. I'd say the mentorship, and I look for mentors. I heard Leigh, you mentioned mentors as well. I look for mentors, all different levels of the organization for all different things, depending on what I need. I need somebody who is developing strategy. I look who's good. I need somebody who's navigated their career. I look good. I look at people that speak all the time, and I'm like, I like their style. And I pick different people across the organization, internally and externally, for different things that I'm trying to plan on and develop. And when people actually ask me to be a mentor, the best experiences I have on the opposite side is when they come prepared and say, I'm working on X, can you help me? And then 6 weeks later have a follow-up and said, hey, I tried these 3 things, they worked or didn't work. Here's the next thing I want to work on. So being really, really purposeful about that mentorship one. Where I differentiate and draw the line for sponsorship is that's the person in these reviews that's going to pound the table for you and say, you might know Leigh, but she's the best we've got, and if you don't, I'll advocate on her behalf, or I'll introduce you and get exposed to you, and really, really is going to drive your agenda forward. That typically works when you've worked with them, when you've been on a cross-functional project, when they've been exposed to you, but I've also seen it work really well. I have someone that I actually have not worked with yet. They meet with me pretty regularly every 3 to 4 months, and we catch up, but they also use part of that time to show me a project that they're working on. So they'll come in with a little bit of a deck or a problem and say, hey, here's what I'm working on, here's how I presented it. They'll present it to me, I'll give feedback, I'll engage in dialogue. So I have really good data points to express, because a lot of times people say, I want to be a mentor or a sponsor, and they'll talk to me and I'll say, they're really nice, but I really can't compare their output and their business acumen and their drive for results and all those pieces unless I personally see it in action, or they are purposeful about showing that and delivering it too. So I don't know if you guys have other opinions, but I would argue that they are different. And when you're looking for them, be super purposeful about that time. It's it's valuable for that person you're talking to, but also for your time as well.
And Heather, do you have anything to add? I know we were talking about that a little bit as well. And how do you see, using reverse mentorship, let's say? And has that been something that you think that we can build and be successful at doing?
Sure. So this idea of reverse mentorship is when seemingly the more junior or less experienced person, younger person, is actually helping to mentor somebody more senior. One of the things that we're doing around mentorship at ADP is actually reciprocal mentorship. So this idea that it's two-way. So it works for both the established and the emerging leader. And so this idea is really very similar to what Amanda said around being prepared. You know, it has to have structure. But it's actually about getting you to co-create what those goals are so that you know what it is that you're meeting for, so that it's not just a catch-up. The element of trust that comes when it's two people being vulnerable with each other is unbelievable. It is huge. It just happens so much faster. When both people show up and they open themselves up vulnerably, highlight what it is that they want that help with, we're just seeing the results amplified.
That's great. And Margo, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Like, what have you learned, given your experience in your role? I think you're perfect to answer this for us around how do you set up those relationships for success? So if you have to give some advice to the audience to be more tactical around how we should think about doing that, what would you say?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things around mentorship, sponsorship, and I'll throw coaching in there as well, because this is really all about developing us so that we can advance in our careers, and we need all three. We need all three, for sure. To set up a really great mentorship relationship, whether it's internal or external, that structure is really important, that setting of expectations. And we find over the course of our career that what we need is going to be different. You know, early on it might be what we do and how do we do that. I don't know how to code this. I don't know how to make this kind of a presentation. Later in our career, it might be around how do I advance? What really goes on? Who are the people I need to be networking with that do have influence, right? So it's about that organization. But you need to be really clear up front to say, this is what I'm expecting, a bit of a contract in place, really, so that, you know, I'd like to meet every month. I want to meet every 2 weeks. I want to meet only once every 3 or 4 weeks, so that there's clarity around the expectation, and that point around respect is huge. Coming prepared with, I have a question, I have an issue, I want to talk something through, I want to share something, but being really clear about that so that you're using time wisely. And that goes whether it's an internal mentor or an external mentor. And I think we often think about internal mentors only because they're about how you advance within your own organization. You might have organizational support because there's a formal program in place to set that up. But we also need external mentors. Sometimes it helps us to be more vulnerable with somebody who's not involved in your own organization. But you're also wanting to think about what are the external trends and what's going on in my industry. You're going to get more or different types of mentorship when you look outside your own organization. So those are some of the things that I would really think about tactically in terms of structuring, whether it's internal or external, beginning, mid, or latter points in your career.
That's great insight, and I'm still writing in my head, so there's a lot. Kate, I want to switch to you now, because I think you have a very different perspective to add to this panel, that we're all sort of in this corporate world, and you know, I'm fourth generation of a family business, and I've never worked in a family business ever. So I really want to get your thoughts. What is it like? Share your experiences for those of us that might be thinking of a very different path than what the others on this panel have done, and give us some insight on that.
Well, I get asked a lot what it's like in a family business, and I can say that it's very intense, it's very rewarding, and it's sometimes very challenging. And I'm sure in many ways that sounds a lot like any of your careers here. So I'd like to see a show of hands for anyone who is currently or has worked inside a family business in any way, shape, or form. Keep your hand up and tell me if you might think that you might at some point in your future start a family business. Now think about whether the people that you work with today who aren't technically your family feel like family. Anyone find themselves in that situation? We spend more time with people in our workplace than many of us do with our family members. So it's not unnatural that we develop relationships where we're close, where we actually, if we're honest, might say, I love that person. And I think that for me, my daughter has joined the business 10 years ago. I've worked with my husband since the beginning of it. And I think there's two pieces to it. There is the shared values that bring us together. But if you're starting a business with a friend, with a family member, you also want to really have your own clear areas of expertise. And that's been, really important, because I always say if both of us are the same, one of us isn't necessary. But the part that I want to come back to around being in a family business, and whether that's a real family or someone you're really close to, is it can become really hard to give the tough feedback. You can tell yourself stories. Oh, maybe that will go away. Maybe that was just today. Maybe he or she's just having a bad day. And I think it's upon all of us to be good leaders to, I say, like, keep the kitchen clean. We all know it's easier to just like rinse out a glass at a time and keep things under order. And it's the same with our relationships. If we let things get built up and now we're sitting down having conversations and, it has piled up, or we're talking about things that happened last month or 3 months ago, it's really hard to keep our relationships on track. So I think for me in a family business, it has been even more intense and more important that we keep really current in our communications and we don't let things build up, and we give people the honest feedback, and we elicit the honest feedback that can help us all keep growing.
Yeah, part that worries me about that, I don't know if you can work with your husband and give honest feedback, but Leigh, I want to switch gears a little bit. You've had a very interesting career, and thank you for sharing that from professional services and just that, that thought process that you went through to how you made the switch after all those years. What's been the key differentiator for you that you think that's really helped you get to where you want to be or where you are now in your career?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I think, this was a really easy question for me to answer. It's very clear. It's role models. So when I joined the firm, just out of school, from day one, I always worked with women. I was surrounded by women. It turns out, the first women partner at the firm was still in my team, and I still worked with her. By the time I made partner, there was probably 3 or 4 women partners. By the time I left, there was more women partners than men. And that, again, is just in our team. If you looked broader, obviously, they're making progress. We're not there. They're not there yet. But for me, I always looked up and thought, if they can do it, I can do it. And I had some very specific women that I worked quite a bit with. And one, for example, every night would leave at 5. She had 3 kids. And, if anyone's here in professional services, that is rare. Even in audit busy season, she was leaving every night at 5. And I thought, if she can balance, I can do it. The other one that is sort of another role model who sort of set sort of how I am as a leader. And, I didn't think of it at the time. And it was more when I left the firm and someone said to me, you're a really authentic leader. Like, you're who you are. You don't pretend to fit in with the men. And I realized there was one woman, and if anyone works with this person, they'll know who I'm talking about, but she had you probably know her, Anique. She has no hesitation. We'll be in a meeting, she'll put on her lipstick. Or before any event, she'd go get her hair done and be telling everybody in the office. Or she'd be walking to I wasn't there for this one, but the rumors were that she would be walking to a meeting with, 5 men to a big bank meeting, and she'd make everyone stop so she could put her high heels on. So I just found, to me, that's sort of what I learned from, and my whole career was like. And then leaving, I realized that, wow, people aren't doing that at Sun Life. They're not sort of putting their lipstick on, which maybe is not quite so appropriate. But I think, I look back and really appreciate that, because I feel like I never had to pretend I was someone I was not. I never felt like I didn't fit in. And I realize now that that was not normal, and I was one of the lucky ones. So I think, that's why I feel now, it's my responsibility to speak up, and I think all of us in the room, to really make people feel like they can be their true self.
And I think you can't underscore the importance of taking that role in an organization, because when you haven't worked in a company where you can look up and say, I want to be just like that woman, it's not as easy to do it when it's a man, just because there's other compensating factors. So that exactly what you say is sort of how I felt on that. Amanda, I want to switch to you now and just talk about, you've been at Dell for some time now, and what has the organization culture been like for women when you joined versus when you are? You talked about how purposeful Dell has been in all of the work that I've done. So have you seen that transition happen, and is it going at the pace that you think it should be going at?
It's been amazing. I've been at Dell for 14 years now, and and listening to everybody speak, I think it has shifted from being something that was organic and women getting together and meeting to something that's been more a business imperative now when you're talking about, from Michael Dell and his executive leadership team down, really driving this. And so that's been a huge shift, and it has come fast and furious, particularly in the last, I'd say the last 2 years. And, I'd offer up two ideas of things that we've done. I think one is, back to this business imperative, more men are a part of the conversation. So we have a Women in Action employee resource group. It's almost 20% men. I see a lot of men here. Yay, thank you. Because, that's not all women initiatives or diversity and inclusion initiatives have men. This is a business issue, and so women alone aren't going to change this. And so Michael and the leadership team, we've invested in this program, Mark training, Manny advocating for real change, and it's about our unconscious biases. Everybody has them. I have them, right? And so it's something that Michael, his ELT, the whole management, all managers in Dell will be trained by the end of the year. It's a half-day experience. It's phenomenal, but really getting us all aware of how we drive diversity and inclusion to get better results. And I'd say the second thing is, like anything, change happens when there's a burning platform.
Yep.
And particularly in the technology industry, there is a shortage of skilled technology skill set in the market. There's 216,000 women that are unemployed, technically skilled women that are unemployed at any time because they've taken time off for families, for elderly care, for whatever personal issues that is. So we've also started a restart program. And I think that's the other big thing. It's not like talking about it and being aware of it, but putting the tools and the resources in place to make an entry path back for women that have been out of the workplace, and really anyone, diverse and inclusive, but particularly for women to get them a path back. We need their talent, we need their skills, so there's a burning platform to create that.
So I could go on with these questions, and I know that we're running a little short of time and we want to get to audience Q&A, but Heather, I want to ask you just a question. Quick thoughts on what resources would you recommend for women who are starting to think about, how do I be a better leader? Like, what's the Cole's notes that you would give to us?
Okay, hint, hint, Cole's notes. First, we've heard a little bit of this said actually already, but I call it my own personal board of directors. So my number one resource, the thing that I find most important to me, and in terms of effort and investment, I cultivate those relationships. I have a board of directors, and they come from multiple places in my life that I've accumulated through the years, in and outside of where I'm working. And just like friends, right? You don't have one friend that serves all purposes. I really heard that. You need this group. And so, we don't often think about the relationships that we have, those really important relationships that we have as a resource. But that's kind of number one. And then I would say number two, and it's just an interesting take on how we absorb feedback. So Kate alluded to the importance of providing feedback quickly, but it's also about how we internalize what it is that we're hearing and actually open ourselves up enough to listen and take that in. So I think of feedback as also a resource. It often comes from the fact that I've created relationships with people where there is enough trust so that they can help me understand if there's a difference between what my intention is and what the impact is. I know what my intention is because it's mine, but I'm not always aware of exactly what the impact is. So having those relationships so that I can get feedback, a novel approach to a resource.
So I could go on forever because I feel like I'm getting a lot of advice here, but I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who's going to have a mic. And so if anyone has questions in the audience and wants to ask from anyone, please feel free to do that now.
I'm curious as to what was the biggest challenge or opportunity you struggled with during your career?
Margo, do you want to take that? And maybe Kate?
I think one of the things that it goes back to that vision thing. What do I really want? Taking the time to reflect and think about it and be able to articulate it.
I think we have a sense of wanting to be in control and get things done, and to really open myself up and think about what do I want it to be as a leader, what do I want from my career, and how then do I put a plan in place to make that happen. It's not easy to self-reflect, to look in the mirror, and to come up with that. It can be really challenging to be that brave or to be that bold to say it out loud.
All of my life or my career, I think I thought of the term CEO equals Jack Welch. He was the guy behind the desk with the deep voice, and he was in charge. Maybe he pounded the desk, I'm not sure, in my vision. And I think the hardest thing for me when it was suggested that I take over as CEO from my husband, it was changing my mind and getting past the point where I thought that I had to be different than who I was, that I could actually take this role and lead from who I am as opposed to who I thought that I had to be.
I'm just going to add that the research shows that even women who are in CEO roles, if you had talked to them 10 years or 20 years earlier, would not have told you that they aspire to be a CEO. So again, just going back to that, thinking about what do I want to be? Can I be that? Unlocking that is so critical.
I might just add one thing. I guess for me, it's always been about balance. So, I always sort of think to the times when people say, how do you do it all? And I always roll my eyes and think, you have no idea. Between being, working full time, between having kids, between being a wife, and then trying to have some time for your friends or for the gym, and I just feel like I never can do it all. So you sort of have to accept you're not going to be able to be perfect at everything.
Seem to have some technical difficulties.
I can share mine. I'll share mine while we're waiting.
No,
You got
I'm
it?
coming.
See, I knew that as soon as
I got it.
Yeah,
It was a
okay.
dead-
I'm good karma.
There
Good
we
luck.
go.
I was going to say, as soon as you got that going, it was going to work.
Hi, thank you, ladies. So my question.
Oh.
It's good.
It's
Big voice.
He's fast.
I
He's
know,
fast.
it's fast.
He's fast.
Getting Bill a workout in, that's all. So my question's for Kate. Kate, my name is Tanya. I've connected with you on LinkedIn a few months back. I don't know if you remember me. But
I'd be impressed,
so
Kate.
I'm a big fan of your brand, Saje. I've incorporated all those products into my home, into my life. I would love to connect with you after this if you have 15 minutes.
I'm
Yes.
That was my only question.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
That was so easy. I'd love to. Thank you. See, she's reaching out and connecting with
Networking.
Well done.
Asking for
Mentorship.
sponsorship
That's
is right there, right?
That's
Here we
right.
go.
Perfect example that you were listening.
Kate, you might get a big head here because I also wanted to say something to you. So I actually consider myself a victim of women in leadership. I exited the corporate world after 15 years of becoming a new mom 3 times over, 3 mat leaves. You spend a year out of the workforce, and then you get back there and you try to keep climbing that ladder and figure out what to do. Once I left the corporate world, I actually became a leadership and development coach after investing 3 years into building myself up. So when you speak about whole person, about focusing on the whole person, not just who you are at work, and that's who you need to bring to work. And when you lead from who you are, not who you think you need to be. I kind of want to throw a challenge out to all the female leaders to start creating an environment that is not just about being the best skill, but literally being your whole self. And all the messages of vulnerability that I heard today, that's the stuff that we need to see in leadership roles so that everyone can be human at work and perform their best. Just a word.
Thank you. Something I just want to tack onto that, something we do at the end of our exec meetings is we do this little go round. We literally draw names out of a hat and we just do like a 2-minute appreciation for whoever you drew. And I feel like there's so many cues that we get and give each other as women. Most of my exec team is women. And it's a way that when you get recognition for something, you are in a way getting permission for something. So I think we have a great opportunity to give each other more absolute appreciation, and we learn from that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, I think it also depends on the world and the corporation that you do work in. Because I work in an organization where we start a lot of our meetings talking about what went well and what we're grateful for, and and not talking about what didn't go well and what were the challenges. And so I think you can bring that in to the corporations that you work with as well, and you don't only get to do that if you work in a family business. Even though I know it sounds a lot more fun, Saje, than I'm an accountant, so it's not nearly as exciting. So do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay. Oh my gosh. You got to do that run.
Okay.
Okay. She's jumping.
We have to
Keep jumping. I can't see that far.
Ask a question.
Okay, this will be our last.
Yes. Demand it.
Very supportive crowd. Thank you. So my question is for Amanda. You stayed at Dell for 14 years, which is amazing. So what are your top 3 reasons why you stayed at that company for that long?
I'd say people, and passion. The people side of it, and a couple of people touched on it, I had 3 babies when I was at Dell. I've worked part-time. I've taken a leave of absence. I went over to Australia. My husband was moving over to Australia, and so I went in and said, hey, I'm quitting. They're like, why? I'm like, my husband's going to Australia. They're like, we'll figure it out. So I went over there. I mean, I've just had great leaders. What I was going to share about the people thing was when I had my first baby, that was the hardest thing for me. I guess I'm a quitter. I walked in, and I was like, I quit, and my boss, who was a woman at the time, said, why? What are you doing? I said, I don't know, but like this morning I poured orange juice in my cereal, and I'm exhausted, and I didn't know how to set boundaries, and she said to me, hey, find the least amount of hours you can work, which was 20 hours. I signed up for 80%, but whatever. And, try it and make it work. And it gave me permission to like say no and set boundaries. To your point, leave the office at 5. All these things that I just didn't realize because my life has changed. So I've had great people. I had somebody come up to me after a panel that said, hey, I had that same conversation with, and it just happened to be a male at the time, and he said, good luck, I understand. Mm-hmm. And that could have been my career path. So just people have been absolutely amazing at Dell Technologies. And then the passion. I mean, I truly think, and for all of you that use technology in your life, that we are really changing the world. I mean, we are giving economic development to people, to countries. I mean, it's just amazing the future ahead of us with technology.
So I hate to break this up, and I want to keep going. But Leigh, I'm going to ask you to tell me, and maybe we'll kind of go down the line as well. What are you excited about? If you think about the next couple of years in your career, what is it, the 3 words that you're excited about?
For me, it's about all of us being, the workplace being a place where you can be your true self. Whether we're talking about mental health, diversity, gender, it's being comfortable at work.
Okay. Not a good accountant. That was not 3 words. Margo.
I don't know, I can keep it to 3. Men and women working together to advance women.
Okay, getting better. Heather.
I'll say learning, collaboration, and happiness.
The marketing person got the 3 words right.
Please take action.
Yeah, good. So, Kate, I'm going to give you closing comments. And if we're sitting here a year from now, celebrating what a great year it has been for you, maybe over a glass of wine, in your current role, what are you celebrating, and what progress have you made with your organization?
Well, I'm going to ask for all of your help with what would make this year even more incredible for me. So it would be that the world reaches for natural first, that we reduce our dependency on pharmacopoeia, and I'm wondering who will get out their peppermint halo. Put it out for me in your right hand if you've used it before. Every day, I love this woman. She could come up and help me. Okay, get it in your right hand if you've used it. Now show me a show of hands if you have a headache right now. Oh, we got some headaches here. Anyone feeling a little sluggish? Maybe we had a little bit of a great lunch and it's starting to settle. The other thing that I'm so excited to be able to help everyone with, which I know because we're in this room, we're suffering from it, and it's what I call tech neck, which is this curvature we're all starting to develop from the hours that we spend hunched over our screens. So I'd love you to release your peppermint halo from its box and get it out. Take off the top lid here. And we're going to have a little G-pop moment. At Saje, we call that getting the product on the people. So take a nice little smell here. Move back your beautiful hair that you've got and expose this right side of your neck and give yourself a nice roll on there. The deeper you can get down into your trapezius, the better. I'm going to do this with my fellow panel members, and you're going to start to feel the peppermint is creating circulation, bringing more blood to your brain. You're going to be breathing in some lavender, which is helping to calm your nervous system. Get some down here. You've got a great blouse on for this. Get some rosemary, which speeds up healing. And you know, we notice the room starts to chat. We start to feel maybe like, you know, we've just sat down to a martini. And that's because your body knows what's good for it. So happiness and success for me would look like you reach for this in the middle of the day when you're starting to just feel a little sluggish, maybe able to cut down on some of that caffeine consumption. And so while we're here, taking a big breath in, I'm going to invite you now to put down your peppermint halo, unencumber yourself from whatever you've got in your hand, put your feet flat on the floor if you can, and close your eyes.
How we do this?
Oh, maybe and your mouth. Yeah, probably need to say that with women, right? So we're going to take a moment here in the power of this room to first take some big breaths in. Keep those eyes softly closed. Let's see if we can do that again. Smooth out your breathing. Feel that place of calm. And while you're doing this, think about all of the incredible wisdom that you have heard here today. Whether that was a peer that you shared a thought with, someone that you heard up here on the stage, whether it was an idea that was stimulated inside you through this powerful gathering. And I would just like you, as you're breathing and taking a moment for yourself and quiet, to think about and lock in what is the one thing, what's the one decision you're going to make, that you are making right here today, that you're going to implement in your life for real, that is going to move you closer to who you are, closer to your true self, closer to your true potential in leadership, and help you to create a bigger light shining from the essence of who you are. And know that everyone here in this room is supporting you. There's such power in clear intention. And I thank you all for the courage you have and for the role that you are playing to elevate women across our country, across the world.
Thank you. So I don't know what I could possibly say other than that in my closing, but I wanted to say thank you for all of the questions. I wanted to say thank you to all of the panelists for what I think was bringing their true self and their whole self to this discussion and showing that vulnerability, because I think that's what makes it resonate with all of us. And as I was reflecting on Kate's comments, I was thinking the one thing that I'm going to do is figure out how I can get some peppermint halo into my meetings at work,
Might be able to hook
and
you
how
up.
that would actually go over if we took those types of steps. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anique Asher and the executive panel. A round of applause. Thank you so much. Cheers, thank you.